One, two, three.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from our secret ice fortress and laboratory high in the Swiss Alps. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. Keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground as Sumo and Smokestack direct your attention to a higher dimension. Are you ready? Stand by.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. You sound good.
Can you hear me?
I mean, I think I can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
If you just say this to people, they think that their connection is bad.
Well, our connection is usually bad, so.
If you just start saying to people like you're on the phone and say, can you hear me? And they freak out. They don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's true.
They hang up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they try to call you back and you just say, can you hear me? And then you tell them it's their fault, not your fault, because you just have a brand new phone or whatever. And it's a fun game to play.
Is this what all our connection issues are about? You're just playing games with me?
No, we've had real connection issues. I don't. So, we need to talk today about the thing I promised for 2 weeks that we would talk about, which is your thing with notes.
Sweet.
Choosing leaders.
Yeah.
Because people were like, you said you were going to talk. And see, we did talk about this when it was timely and relevant.
Yeah.
And then now we're going to talk about it when the moment has passed.
I think it's always timely and relevant. We'll just call the audience back to that horrible moment in their minds, and then it will be timely.
So, yeah, we will. And then I think we have to talk about the Matrix some more, because there's some more things to talk about it.
Sweet.
Because I think the Matrix movies are basically a story from the mouth of Satan. In a good way.
Okay.
In the best possible way.
Okay.
Because I think that the Matrix movies, more than any movie or any piece of media or art, is a truth drop of how the world operates on several levels. Because the amount of 9/11 symbolism in the new movie is off the charts.
Really? Well, there was some
charts.
stuff in the first movie about 9/11 too. Before it happened.
I mean, Neo's license expired on September 11th, 2001, even though the movie came out in 99.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Right. And then when you tie that in with what they're saying here, you're like, oh, right. Interesting, Satan. Interesting plan you have here.
Oh, man.
You know? So, Keanu Reeves is the perfect mouthpiece for Satan, because he's like I don't know, what would you say? A special needs sexual degenerate, maybe?
I don't know. I thought he was a pretty cool dude. He's one of the few
the
Hollywood people I haven't heard anything bad about.
I know that's all just a ruse, though.
Okay.
Think about it this way, because people are like, Keanu Reeves hangs out by himself and doesn't, he's not a thing. No one wants to hang out with him. That's why he's alone on the bench. That's why he's sad, Keanu. No one wants to hang out with him, because if you listen to interviews with him, he sounds like he has something wrong with him.
Really? I just thought he was cool.
When he goes, whoa.
Yeah.
That's like what he does in real life, too.
That's just Bill and Ted stuff.
No, man, I'm telling you, like, and the lady that plays Trinity, very uncomfortable around him in real life interviews. Very uncomfortable.
Interesting.
Like she wants to crawl away. They were doing an interview, the two of them, and they were talking about real virtual reality.
Okay.
And how Keanu Reeves' model was one of the most requested ones to have sex with in this virtual reality thing.
Ooh.
Right?
Ew.
Now he didn't bring this up, right? The interviewer did. But then he was like, he was weird about it, like very weird about it.
Uh-huh.
And then he started talking about, think about how much money you can make licensing your nude virtual self. And the lady that plays Trinity, whose name I don't know, was like, I'll pass on that, thanks. And the Keanu was like, but think about it. It was weird.
Yeah.
It's all very weird. But I think that's why he makes the perfect mouthpiece for it.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to see more receipts. I always thought he was seemed pretty cool.
Everyone thinks that, but everything is the opposite of what people think.
He actually became an expert at competitive pistol shooting and USPSA style shooting to do the John Wick movies, and he shoots pistol competitions still, as far as I know. In 3-gun.
Yeah,
that's a lot of skill. That dude developed a serious level of skill.
Right, but is it for the John Wick movies? I mean, how would that benefit the John Wick movies?
Because he used the weapon manipulation skills in doing all those gun katas in the movies. I mean, that takes if you're gonna really like pull it off, especially for gun nerds that went to see those movies. He really did a good job, like learning the craft of it. The skill.
Maybe. Yeah. I'm just telling you, he gushes over the idea that he is a virtual sex demon.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's unfortunate.
And he does it in the voice of someone that sounds mentally retarded.
Maybe he was trying to make a joke and it just bombed. Huh? Maybe he was trying to make a joke and it just bombed. Like, I don't think his sense of humor is real great.
I don't know. We'll see. He's been in the Matrix movies 4 times now.
Okay.
So that tells
you see that as a spiritual indictment.
I don't know what I see it as. It just tells you something. But what it tells you, I'm not sure. It tells you some hieroglyphics, and I don't know how to translate them.
Okay.
But yeah, we have to talk about that because there's like I think it may have been so far as there's like I have only seen it once, but there may be like references to the actual Twin Towers, like in his apartment while he's there.
Ooh. And
then, the whole thing, this show is going to have enhancers. I don't call them spoilers.
Okay.
I call them enhancers because they are enhanced. I think you will, if you have not seen the movie and you listen to the show first, I think you will enjoy the movie more, not less. Because if you do it the first time through, I don't know that you're going to catch everything without some explanation.
But at the same time, be warned that key plot points will probably be discussed.
Well, yeah, they're in a computer for one. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So that's one issue that you may run into. If you didn't know about that. Okay. But yeah, it's there's going to be some enhancers in this show. But that's good because the 9/11 symbolism is just off, and the one eye symbolism also, and there's a pyramid. That a lot of people maybe didn't catch, and then there's the people jumping off the towers in 9/11. There's one scene where a guy jumps headfirst down off a tower, and he strikes that same pose as the jumping man.
Ooh,
like okay. it's brief, but if you cut, you're like, oh, I see what you're doing there.
Right.
And then I think the Merovingian is key. But anyway, let's talk about, so a few weeks ago, there was a guy named Jack Murphy. Yes.
Good old Jack Murphy.
But his real name was like something Goldman.
It's John Goldman is his real name.
Because everyone is a secret Jew, I guess. I don't know. It's the same with Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart's like, I'm Jon Stewart, but his real name is like Herbinowitz or something.
Yeah, they always those guys change their names
It's
all
not,
the time.
and then, no, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that it's Jews. I'm just saying that this.
I mean, like entertainer people.
Entertainment people often have a secret name, and then their real name is something else.
Yeah.
And it's weird how often that happens. And it's not always Jewish, but sometimes it is. And it's enough where you're like, yeah, I saw that coming. So, okay, so there's this guy named Jack Murphy, and he was like a right-wing masculinist figure.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes. And he
had like a weird beard.
He had this really strange, long, square-shaped beard that was like black in the middle and gray on both sides in a strangely symmetrical pattern, so that he.
It was very square shaped too. Also,
it was squared off at the bottom. He looked like a cartoon character villain from Powerpuff Girls or something. I mean, he was really weird. He did seem like he was into steroids and bodybuilding. Maybe I don't know. I mean, he wasn't like a freak, but you could tell he was definitely into looking ripped. So, you kind of had a comic book villain sort of I
never
vibe.
saw him with his shirt off, so I don't know about his desires for steroids.
Yeah, he just, he had some bulk on him, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah.
And then he was bald. Was he? Am I making that up? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think he shaved his head or something. Yeah.
He's already gone off the radar, so he's
got good reason to lay low, as we'll get to.
So anyway, a lot of people followed him as like a leader or like a right-wing like leader,
Yeah.
And of course I didn't, because I have known about the fact that he used to be into actual cuckold lifestyle for like a year or two now.
Well, a few years ago, he wrote an article in I can't remember what publication, but it was just like, oh yeah, let me tell you about how great it is that my girlfriend gets on Tinder and hooks up with random dudes, and how that's like so great for our relationship. And he wrote this whole thing, and there was sort of a minor dust up at the time, but it didn't like derail his career, strangely. And that I was already not a Jack Murphy fan, so that didn't really change my position on him that much. But it was strange to me how many people like didn't seem to be bothered by that. And I think that was kind of the first clue that there was something going on there, where I think people were under some weird spell that this guy was laying down.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like Joe Rogan, like I've talked about. Like there's tons of stuff that could cancel Joe Rogan, but it just never, and it's there for you to find if you want it.
Yeah.
But it never comes to the front unless some mysterious power desires to, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the fairy or what, is just or just fate.
Yep.
But unless some mysterious power wants it to come to the fore, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So he did this, and then they also, I think the thing that maybe kicked it off was they found he was on an amateur porn site or something.
Well, that kind of came out in the most recent kerfuffle, from which Jack Murphy has retreated, and he's locked his Twitter account. And I'm not sure, he had a website or some kind of online men's club called the Liminal Order, which was just basically a really expensive. I mean, we're talking like over $100 a month or more. I mean, it was a lot of money to join this thing. I think it would get you into like live streams and stuff. Just basically, we gotta
start doing that too. We gotta charge $100 a month to have
to
the Liminal Order.
Right. Well, it's like you could interact with Jack Murphy, and a lot of guys, young guys, really sort of looked up to this dude. And then a couple weeks ago, somebody leaked videos of him doing, we'll just say, like very degrading, gross stuff, sexual stuff, and gay stuff on video. Leaked that out onto the internet, and then all this stuff about his past came out at the same time, which his past includes performing gay porn stuff on the internet.
Sure.
And so this and then the deal about
As is true for every right wing media figure.
I'm starting to think. And so and as is the truth of he's using a fake name, and a lot of some court records were brought to light where John Goldman, the guy's real name, had some tremendous debt issues and was in court over it and all this stuff. And pretty soon this picture was painted of this terribly like compromised, degenerate guy who was online LARPing as a, sort of right-wing-ish, like he was crafting his image to like appeal to right-wing people in the masculinity stuff, but really I don't think he had any particularly right-wing positions on anything. His stuff was more about... I don't think he had
any positions other than get money.
Yeah, he was about get money and LARP masculinity and teach other people to LARP masculinity too. And so that was his whole grift, but he had a pretty big following and was sort of regarded as, even though it really wasn't deserving, he was regarded as sort of a new right-wing sort of leader personality. And then this whole thing just completely exploded when all these things came out, and I think he's kind of gone into hiding, or at least
he should have just posted through it.
He might have been able to get away with it.
Yeah, 100%. If he hadn't backed down, he'd been able to get away with it. You just say, yeah. He should have just said, yeah, I was gay for America.
Yeah,
and that's all it takes.
Yeah, he may have been able to, but I think, just looking at the guy, he clearly deals with some deep shame that he's trying to cover over with all this stuff he's doing, which is,
sure.
You can get into all that. But I think when all this stuff blew up, it really, it made me think about why do right-wing-ish, and when I say right-wing, I'm not talking about like hard political issues necessarily. I'm talking about the sort of young, probably male person who instinctually rejects how fake and gay modernity is, and the culture of modern American urbanism where, all the women are girl bosses and all the men are like mealy mouth, like squish balls, and just sort of rejects all that stuff and wants to get back to a more organic mode of living that modern like metropolitan culture seems to be the opposite of. And so when I say people from the right, that's really what it's a very general sort of based in like an organic mode of living and traditional ethics generally. Okay. But I see guys that are sort of that stripe get taken in by these grifters all the time. It happens all the time on the right. And they just turn out to be frauds in the end. And so I thought we could take a little time and just go over some, I'm going to call them purity tests of the right. And these are ways that people on the right, very generally speaking, that are looking for leaders, thought leaders, political leaders, whatever. You gotta apply some discretion, because there's a whole machine out there that is just cranking out frauds to take your money and to run you down paths of over introspection, like masturbatory sort of lifestyles where you're just like working on yourself but never working on anything else, and never really changing the world you live in because you're so obsessed with yourself. And it's like they're like traps. They're traps to like suck your energy and make you ineffectual, even though you feel like you're realizing some of these vague goals that you have. So we're just gonna go through a few things. It's like, how do you spot these people, and
how do you spot a grifter, sort of?
Yes. Avoid that.
And why is the grifter Candace Owens so often?
And this is well we're going to talk about her.
Okay, good.
So I think number one, and again, this is for the right. Sorry, like if you have liberal left wing values, this is not going to appeal to you at all. But
and I should just note, this also proves that we're not a grifter.
Yeah.
Because by the old metrics we're setting, but because our message is not marketable.
No.
we don't curtail it because we're like, hey, the moon isn't real.
Yeah.
And
there's no money in that.
There's no money in the moon isn't real, guys. So just hate to break it to you.
Yeah.
So at least, you can be assured that here is no grifting space.
Yeah.
Continue. Of all the messages that can make money,
yeah,
the moon not being real or not being what people think it is the least likely to ever make $1.
I think that's one of the big lessons of season 1, really. Like, we're growing as podcasters.
We are. Yes. Okay. But one day we will launch our $100 masculinity live stream course.
Yeah, right. We'll have a complete audience turnover because all our current audience will abandon us at that point because we'll be lame.
I feel like they already have. But that's okay.
Okay.
I feel like they've already left us.
So purity test number 1 that you have to look for in leaders, okay? They have to preach and practice traditional Christian sexual ethics, okay? And I know that sounds kind of fuddy-duddy to some people, and I sound like an old nerd square. It's like, hey, man, even like right-wing people are inclined to just say, just what's the big deal? Just let people do what they want to do, even if you think it's gross. I'm gonna reject that entirely, and I'm gonna say if somebody doesn't practice and preach traditional Christian sexual ethics in their life, and if they're a political person with their policy, then they are not to be trusted. Why do I say this?
There's just something off about people that are really into like poop sex.
Right. And so why is that? But why? Because I think people don't know why they should reject that. Because the argument that, hey man, if it's not for you, that's okay, but let people just be who they are and what they want to be. And the argument for that, the reason I reject that is because the created order of the world and of humanity and biology and all living things is what it is. It's a certain way, and it's not another way. And if you believe that those things were created by a creator God, then there is, within the nature of the way things work, there is a message of how one should generally live. Okay? This is what's known as general revelation in some cases. And so you look upon biology, you look upon how things reproduce, how people historically have created societies that that grow and thrive, or how people create societies that crumble into nothing. And you examine the way those people lived, and you examine biology, and you can glean. It's a sort of ethics. Maybe known in some cases as natural law. There's a sort of ethics that you can glean from this. And when people throw that out, when people reject that in their life, they are rejecting the testimony of nature and human history and all creation of the basics of what a person should be and do with their life. And so that's a theme that's going to come up a little bit, but we're going to call that, for purposes of our discussion, disharmony with nature. Okay? So I'm trying to argue from a perspective that everybody can enjoy regardless of their faith, as long as they generally appeal to sort of right-wing ideas as defined earlier. Okay? And so if they don't preach and practice it reflects a disharmony with nature that if you have an aesthetic sense that hasn't been totally burned out, you will find offensive. And so the way around this has been that these people will say, well, it's offensive to you. That's fine. You don't have to do these things. But I like it. And so people will accept that. And I'm saying reject that, because the testimony of nature is what it is. And aesthetics, there is objective beauty. And things that are beautiful are also usually good and true. And if we don't reconnect those things in our decision making and the way we judge each other and the world, that we run into big trouble. Okay? So that leads into other things. So the sexual ethics thing, it kind of is what it is. But then if you take that to the idea of harmony with nature, you get to some interesting things that maybe didn't seem important before. So let's go back to Jack Murphy and his dumb beard.
Yes.
The first time I saw Jack
It's
Murphy,
very square.
It's just look it up.
Remarkably square.
It's bizarre looking. And he has this image about that he's cultivated on purpose to look this way. And he really does look like a cartoon character, bad guy from Powerpuff Girls. And I thought, that looks weird. That's sort of the male equivalent of the HR manager with blue hair, who's with her blue hair is signaling to you that she is a scary weirdo that, hates men or whatever. That's
right.
Like the people on the right have come to adopt crazy hair color as in women as sort of a warning sign of stay
and
away.
You're saying to adopt unnatural beards is another warning sign.
Anything. So let's take the principle of girls with crazy hair color as dangerous. Let's take that principle and extrapolate it a little bit more onto other things. And so, in my opinion, Jack Murphy's beard, that's the first. When I saw his picture, I decided not to listen to anything he had to say, because he is cultivating. It's not that being, if you're ugly, it's not the same thing. Because, if you were born with a messed up nose or something, okay, that's fine. You deal the hand you're dealt. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about purposefully cultivating something bizarre and weird about your physical appearance, because people do that to send a message. They're saying, I've got issues. I'm damaged inside. I want attention. I want to be the center of attention. I want to be special and different from everybody because that's how I think of myself. There's all sorts of weird messages that can come out of that. And but the problem is that the aesthetic sense of a lot of young men has been completely warped through the consumption of weird media when they were kids. So if you take a kid and you let him watch like Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead all day, and so those are older shows when we were kids, but like a modern equivalent would, I don't know, Rick and Morty would probably be.
Rick and Morty, that one, Gravity Falls with the weird animation.
Yeah, I've never seen that one. But
Big Mouth.
Right, Big Mouth.
Isn't really for kids, but it's ugly. Yeah.
Right. It's ugly. And so if a lot of people, if you say that stuff, that animation, that art is ugly, it's almost like it's almost like the question doesn't apply of whether it's ugly or not, because their aesthetic sense has been so burned out and mangled from a young age of watching this stuff that really is objectively ugly, that they can't tell what's ugly and beautiful anymore. And so then when they see somebody like Jack Murphy putting on this bizarre appearance, it doesn't register as a warning sign to them, because they don't, that the sixth sense has been removed. It's almost like you hear like hippie people talk about, you got to open your third eye. Well, I think that the aesthetic sense is as close as we're going to get in most cases to a third eye or a sixth sense.
Well, that's because you can't see images in your head, Doug.
Well, maybe.
If you can see images in your head, like, oh, my third eye is my ability to imagine.
Yes, I do have aphantasia.
Right.
And so, because of that, I have to lean on my aesthetic sense for making judgments about people.
Okay.
And so,
okay.
So other characters, Jack Murphy's buddy David Reaboy is obviously a neurotic bodybuilder, which
Right.
makes me suspicious of him. And since I registered my suspicion and dismissed him, he has since come out with a lot of really dumb takes, especially about vaccination, and done some really dumb stuff, and proven me right on my judgment of him. And so I want to touch on bodybuilding here for a second. Now, fitness is great. Fitness is for everybody. Everybody should cultivate.
Fitness is for everybody.
Yeah, and really being fit
For everybody.
or not being fit and being a fat slob is a character flaw, right?
Right. Okay.
If somebody, like, there's a reason right-wing people, as I've defined them, have largely rejected Jeb Bush and Chris Christie, is because they are obviously just land whales who live for the appeasing of their physical appetites, specifically with like food, probably, and I don't know, beer and stuff. So these guys are like, they clearly just don't care about anything beyond satisfying their appetites. And so we reject them on those grounds. Now, I think neurotic levels of bodybuilding and steroid use reflect a similar character flaw that the right has not been able to identify and watch out for in people aspiring to be leaders. With bodybuilding specifically, if somebody is willing to just wreck themselves with steroids, that causes long-term health issues in other departments, even though you look huge, that and cultivate a body morphology that is fundamentally unnatural. I mean, you can get in really good shape, and muscles and all this stuff are good, and you can do that naturally, and you will look a certain way, and you're only going to get so big. And there's a reason you're only going to get so big. There's like a natural limitation built onto the human body and frame that you're only going to get so big, and that those borders, those limitations imposed on us in our natural state should be recognized, because you go beyond those and you begin to look grotesque. But again, a population that's had its aesthetic sense burned out can't recognize the difference. And so to them, it's like the more muscular and more ripped is just more awesome. And that's but where that comes from, that certain levels of grotesque muscularity come from an inner neuroses of somebody who's willing to really harm themselves in other ways to achieve it, because of vanity or whatever, just the desire to be like incredibly huge, reflects some mental and emotional problems. Okay, so we got to watch out for that.
It's like the opposite of being a transsexual. They take female hormones.
Yeah.
Then you take a bunch of extra male hormones. It's
right.
Unless you have some physical problem generating hormones, you don't need to take extra hormones.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like every bodybuilder is a weirdo. And really, in all these cases of the things I'm going to list, just one thing doesn't necessarily disqualify someone or mean they're a bad person or whatever. Like, let's not, like, don't read too much into it. But what I'm trying to outline here are maybe some things we need to look for, and a lot of them the underlying principle already corresponds to something we already do. So, for example, we reject Jeb Bush, we reject the pink and purple hair HR lady with all the cats. We should maybe, guys like David Riaboy, we need to have a second look at him on those same grounds. We just haven't done it because it's a flavor that we're not used to identifying as a red flag. We haven't figured that out yet.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
I think there's hope. There's hope for us. So another one. This is another potential red flag. People that are strangely single and or childless.
Nick Fuentes, for instance.
Nick Fuentes, that for
Who's
real.
Almost certainly gay.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
whatever. It's the right people, the gropers, the frogs can't help but pick gay people.
Yeah.
They always do.
I would put
Over and over
Matt
again.
Gaetz in this category.
Matt Gaetz, yes.
Jack-
Who not only gay, probably a child molester. Allegedly, who knows?
Well, we'll see. Apparently, one of his ex-girlfriends, who was 17 at the time, is testifying before grand jury or whatever. I mean, I'm not gonna.
He adopted a kid from Cuba or whatever,
and he's
or
a single
Puerto
man.
Rico.
Yeah,
as a single man. This is Nestor. I mean, it's obvious, but people don't.
Yeah,
it's like why Matt Gates? It's another guy with hair.
Why can't the fact that he can't have whatever like Democrats accuse him of? I don't really take a lot of that with any credibility. What worries me about him is why can't he have a normal functioning human relationship? And two, why is he so like weird with his relationships and the people he's been associated with, not just romantically, but other things like this weird adopted kid that popped out of nowhere who like is a teenager. And then and two, he's also cultivating a weird, unnatural physical appearance. Okay, he could be like a normal looking guy, I think, but he's got this bizarre Johnny Bravo like cartoon sized pompadour of hair on top of his head, and he looks ridiculous. And again, if you have if your aesthetic sense isn't totally burned out, you would see the way he looks, and he appears to wear makeup. I mean, just he looks like a cartoon character, and he's doing that on purpose.
Right.
And also his buddy that he's been seen a lot with, at least he was, Laura Loomer, same thing. Like the weird hair and the amount of makeup and the giant lipstick and all this stuff. Like she also looks like a cartoon character. And if you grew up on cartoons literally all the time, that isn't gonna ring the same alarm bells as somebody who's got their aesthetic sense adjusted. I'm not saying my aesthetic sense is like anything incredible, but I've spent a lot of effort trying to cultivate it, and I have noticed that it has changed the way I view the world and people since I have
Loomer's
been.
Face is weird now that you mention it.
Yeah. Like,
I'm looking
and
at it,
she's
like she's got her. I think she's also probably done. If someone does like weird or excessive plastic surgery, is another.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think that's her face has had something happen.
Yeah, like Nancy Pelosi's eyebrows are halfway up her forehead.
Did you see Tucker Carlson compare it to Michael Jackson?
It's the truth, man. And
that was great. Yeah.
And it's so like, and right-wing people can look at her and say, man, what a freak. But we need to apply the standard to our own people. Okay. And so I don't need to really know what Laura Loomer is about or what she has to say if I can see in her a complete rejection of any natural looking appearance.
Yeah, and I think, the psyop with this is that you can't judge a book by its cover. And that's true for books.
Yeah.
Because the inside of a book doesn't have anything effect on the outside of a book.
Right. And
but the inside of a person does have an effect on the outside of a person.
Yes. Like the
if
appearances
you're lazy,
do matter.
It will show up. If you're neurotic, it will show up in some way, right?
Right. That's why, if a girl sees a total fat slob in sweatpants, sitting at the coffee shop,
you should always judge a book by its cover.
She's not going to be interested in him. That's why guys, if you're looking for a girl, you should probably just wear some nice clothes and, maybe shave your neck before you try to go meet girls. I mean, it's not like the impossible bar, but if you have flies circling you, it's not going to work. And so let's apply that rule a little bit more broadly because it can be very helpful. Right. And so these people that are on purpose and I'm not talking about anything that's innate to the person. I'm talking about like people with big noses or funny ears or bad. I'm talking about what they have consciously cultivated in their appearance by choice because people use that to send messages. Everybody does. I do it. Everybody does it. We send messages by the way we cultivate our appearance. And it may be subconscious. Like they may not be fully aware of it. Like, for example, if a girl shaves half her head, I'm gonna say it's probably a good bet. And has like a giant nose ring, just basically looks like a freak. I'm gonna say it's probably a good bet that she's been really abused or otherwise hurt by men and wants to make herself unappealing to men because she's trying to keep herself safe. Right? It's like a defense. That's a defense mechanism. Now I'm sure that's not true in all cases, but I'm saying, hey, maybe red flag there. that may be going on. It's probably at least even odds in that case. And so, again, these tools, we use some of these tools, let's use all of them. So another one I want to talk about is how a guy spends his free time and his vacations. Now, this is another one that's going to seem sort of petty up front, but I'm hoping that the principle will become clear. Mm-hmm. So, men, it is the natural masculine sort of inclination to cultivate things and to explore or conquer things. Okay, we're usually when guys are happiest, kind of in their zone or whatever, they're doing one of those things. So cultivation could be, creating art or building furniture or working on a garden or writing books or anything where you're taking the raw stuff of either ideas or physical material and you're like making something better out of it. You're using your work and your ingenuity to like make something, right? Guys want to do that. And then adventure or conquest, like climbing to the top of a mountain. Men have more natural inclination to spend a day or several days climbing to the high top of a mountain just to get to the top. Okay? That is generally a dude
like a
thing.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes. Oh man, Teddy Roosevelt, great example of this.
Like a Teddy Roosevelt.
He would just go when he had time off. He would go on safaris and hunting trips and try to kill crazy animals and go into the deep, remote areas of the country and have adventures, right? So these are like natural things. And so when a guy is on, but now we live in these like aquarium lifestyles to where instead of just doing that as our mode of life, we have to do it when we're on vacation. So if I see a guy, and this is a great way to test this, is to go to their Twitter page and just click the media thing or go to their whatever social media and just look at all the pictures they post. And because people love to post pictures of their vacations, I think most people do it. Or at least their hobbies. And so if you see somebody that when they go to Costa Rica, did they sit on the beach and drink margaritas the whole time and eat shrimp? Or did they go on a hike into the jungle and did they climb up the mountain in Costa Rica or whatever? There's two different things. Now, I'm not, again, don't take it too dogmatically. I like shrimp and margaritas. No big, that's all cool. But if I go on vacation to Costa Rica, I'm going to go hike. I'm going to go explore. I'm probably going to go snorkeling and dive down under the ledge of a reef and see what's under there. Those sorts of things. That's what kind of stories do they tell? And when they come back from vacation, do they tell you about all the different weird beer that they drank and how many oysters they had at this one bar and how like the cheese was so good and the chorizo was delicious and you can't get that here? Do they talk about gratifying their senses? Or do they talk about the rad library that they discovered and spent all day exploring and the cool books they found or the hike that they went on or they snuck into, a castle in Scotland and got run off by the police or whatever.
Yes.
Like what?
Well, it's like you're saying if their goal in relaxing is just more gratification of the flesh.
Right.
Through like gluttony and just lazing around.
Right.
That could be also a red flag.
Yes. A person that spends their free time only appeasing their appetites and never going after adventure or conquest or cultivating something cool or working on a side project and a hobby, creating something. If they're just like slurping oysters and drinking craft beer in every spare moment, Rod Dreher. If they're just...
Yeah, Rod Dreher is... Again, I don't know why people.
Well, he wrote a book.
Looks weird.
He does look weird.
The look weird test is very valuable.
It is.
If someone just looks weird, it's like
And he cultivates that purposefully. Like again, the reason he looks kind of weird is because he's cultivating this like old hipster thing that's a little bit cartoonish. Although that wouldn't be my main criticism of his. He wrote a book called The Benedict Option. He's sort of like a Christian right like diet version of a sort of thought leader, and he's written some good book. He has some in his writing. He has good ideas, but the the guy that alludes to the way we're going to save civilization is by like living austere lifestyles in new sort of monastic type orders, and that's going to get us through the broader collapse of civilization. That same guy that wrote that book is just out there traveling around Europe like slurping oysters,
like Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah, it's just he's not.
Eat, Pray, Love.
He's living for his appetites whenever he has the free moment, and I
Let me
never.
just tell you, Roger Eyre will sell you out in a hot minute. I've seen evidence of it. Roger Eyre will, if there's ever push comes to shove, he's gone.
Yeah.
Do not trust Roger Eyre as far as you can throw him.
No, I don't.
Even if you can throw him fairly far, I don't know.
Yeah, he's not that big. Yeah. So it's that attitude of conspicuous consumption that reflects an inward flaw, right?
It's an evidence of disordered appetites.
Perfect, disordered appetites.
Right.
That's exactly the phrase. And again, like, I'm not, just let people enjoy things. Yes, enjoy things. That's great. I enjoy things, right? But, if that's all you ever do, warning sign.
Yeah.
Here's another big one. Have they ever been in legal trouble or debt? Okay. And by that, I mean, like, they did something really dumb, usually shady business dealings. Did they end up in court? And a lot of people, the reason that they use fake names, now I know the irony of me saying this is a pseudonymous podcaster, but I'll set that aside for a second. The reason they're using these fake names is to hide their court record. They don't want people looking up the kind of trouble they've been in, because a lot of people get in huge amounts of debt, or they get arrested, or they've got something on their record or in their past that really could embarrass them. And the reason, and if they do have that, it reflects a character flaw on their part. Anybody that amasses up enough debt to end up in court has a problem. They can't control their appetites, and their appetites control them, and they end up in a bunch of debt. As is in the case of John Goldman / Jack Murphy. He has got, there's a lot of court records on John Goldman about the debt he was in. And so people in debt will often do things that they wouldn't do otherwise, or people that are in legal trouble would do things that they wouldn't do otherwise to get out of it, right? And in fact, that's how we talk about informants and people, that are feds. That's the way they get recruited to work in that capacity, is because they get in trouble and somebody makes them an offer. And a lot of times, they'll do a plea deal, or they'll go up for parole, and someone will approach them and say, hey, listen, we'll do this deal with you and you'll get out early, but you need to work for us, because they see, you can be useful in some capacity. So examples of this would be Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys. He had, yeah. Okay. Also just people named Enrique. Yeah, but
why
that
are you
guy,
finding someone named Enrique?
That guy is a prolific federal informant. Okay, and he's still, like, supposedly this nominally right wing group. He's their leader. He's a prolific federal informant. Like, it's not even questionable now. There's court records of this, and people still. That's the funny thing, is people still don't get it, because they don't. They see the thing. They see, like, oh, Proud Boys in the street with our shields and stuff. We're gonna fight Antifa, and they just bite down on that hook, and they never inspect the bait, because it's not in his case. It's not even difficult to figure out that he's a Fed. That's the funny thing. It's out there. Like, anybody can figure it out. Now here's another. We're talking about compromised individuals. I'm going to go back to the Rittenhouse case for a minute. So during Kyle Rittenhouse's trial, the judge issued warrants for the cell phone of both Kyle Rittenhouse and Gage Grosskreutz, who was the guy he shot the dude's arm off. So
allegedly.
Okay, yeah. Just go with me.
I don't think any of that happened,
suspend your disbelief for a second. So, Kyle, his phone was, there was a warrant. He turned it over. He gave them the password. They unlocked it. Gage Grosskreutz refused to unlock his phone. Now, the state could have cracked his phone. There are ways to do that, but the court dropped the issue because the defense brought up some weird exemption that was never really explained to the public about why Gage Grosskreutz shouldn't have to unlock his phone. And so that big red flag that somebody is a Fed. If their communications are protected in court when they obviously shouldn't be, when they're obviously relevant to the trial, big red flag that guy was working for a Fed. He also got out of mental institution. I have to go. One of them was institutionalized. Maybe that was the guy that raped all the kids. I think he was in a mental institution. Great Gage Grosskreutz had a bunch of arrests and all this stuff, but he never served jail time. Oh, that's right. And he was also sort of affiliated with a local, like, radical communist organization. Okay. Gage Grosskreutz was a federal informant of some kind. Okay. Like, if you put all that stuff together and the fact that he never had his phone unlocked despite the fact that the judge signed a warrant for it, the dude was a Fed. Okay. He was compromised. And those are often the same thing, because listen, the government hates you. All the federal bureaucracy, most of them hate you. Okay, if you don't go along with drag queen story hour for kids and like forced vaccinations, then they hate you. And one of the ways that the weapons that they use against people like you are these compromised people, so they can be put in media, they can be propped up and their voices amplified so that they lead you astray, or they can pick fights with you in the street, like Gage Grosskreutz did. Right? They were out there to teach somebody a lesson because the locals in Kenosha were not putting up with the police abandoning them, and they were going to take matters into their own hands. And the Fed said, "Well, we can't have that. Our mobs need to be able to do their job." So they sent in guys like Grosskreutz to teach somebody a lesson, and it backfired on him. But Grosskreutz was protected because he is a federal informant. I will put money on that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt really.
But if you were to examine,
but of course, I think the whole thing was just staged on a set.
No, I know you do.
But continue.
But you can look at the same pattern of past legal trouble to identify, and then they get special protection, and their past gets hidden, and these things in their past that could get them canceled never come up and never get amplified in the media when other people are just getting totally shredded by the stuff in their past. These are all tells. These are all signals that something might be up. Basically, another point is, do they practice what they preach? And I think besides Rod Dreher, someone else that comes to mind is Nicholas Taleb. And I really enjoyed his books and learned a lot from him. But I got blocked on Twitter by him this week, as many others did. For what his take on that was
Nicholas Taleb. I never trusted him for a second because he's Mediterranean.
That's ridiculous.
All my racism is directed to people in the near and like Mediterranean circle.
That's pretty
all
good.
Of it.
That's pretty good.
Because it really, because I don't know. I've been to Greece. They are lazy. They are lazy people. It's stereotype. They just sit around and don't do anything, and it's fine, I guess. But then, like, they're gonna try and scam you off some money every time. It just happens.
Right. Well,
I don't hate them. I just know what they're gonna do. If you go to Greece, someone's gonna try to pickpocket you every time. Well, it's just what Greeks do. I don't know. And Nicholas Taleb is just like he's a Lebanese pickpocket on the internet.
Well, you can apply the vacation. You can apply the vacation test to him. Okay, when that guy goes on vacation, what does he do? He eats squid ink pasta the whole time. Like, that's all he does is just slurp stuff. And if you look on his social media, which I until recently was able to do, you can identify that he doesn't pass the vacation test or the hobby test because he does write some very thoughtful books that have good ideas in them. I still like his ideas in his books, but the man doesn't live them. And once he became like totally fixated on COVID mitigation stuff, and he totally bought that thing hook, line, and sinker. He was like double mask on the airplane, and he was posting selfies of himself with like all these masks and ice shields on airplanes and stuff. But the thing that really set me off with him recently was he was responding on Twitter to somebody who posted a link about all these soccer players that are having heart trouble and collapsing on the field. Which, I mean, some people have run the math on this and did a count of like players collapsing on the field. And it's the figures are way up, and they of course attribute that to these vaccines that they're being forced to take. And so in responding to that, and Sim posted, the big secret is that practically all competitive sports are unhealthy. That in addition to the fact that anything competitive damages your soul. And I immediately saw that as like, this is a guy who's doing anything to justify his bad take because he doesn't want to admit it. And he's so married to these bad ideas and he'll come up with these stupid, because he's not dumb. That's the thing. He's a smart guy. But that statement is absolutely profoundly retarded. I mean, pro athletes are some of the most fit, healthy people that there are. Like, you can't compete at that level unless you are in great physical shape. These are not people that die of heart attacks in their 20s and 30s. Okay?
Right.
It's not, and nobody can argue that. But here is this guy that's wrote all these papers and all these books, and has great ideas often, writing this incredibly retarded statement. And the reason he did it is because he's afraid of death, really. He's afraid, and that's the same thing with Scott Adams too. There are smart people that are falling for this because they are afraid of death. They haven't dealt with their own mortality. And you can see, like, that's what it'll do to a man. If somebody is just that afraid to die, they will twist themselves into knots and say the dumbest crap. Even very intelligent people like Scott Adams and Nassim Taleb, will do this. And if you see somebody doing that, there's a fundamental flaw of cowardice within them that they have not overcome. And that's a warning sign when you see somebody like on these bad takes. And Scott Adams he appears to be having some sort of a nervous breakdown. I saw a video of one of his streams he did recently trying to defend his crazy COVID positions that are looking more and more untenable by the day. And he's like doing all this rapid blinking stuff. And I mean, he's clearly under an incredible amount of stress. I think he's slowly coming to the realization that he got a bad deal on the vaccinations and now he's regretting it, but he can't admit it yet. He can't admit it to himself. And it's causing him a great deal of stress. A lot of people are in this position right now because the thing is finally rolling over. We can talk a little bit about the Veritas drop and what of it's real and what of it's an illusion, but that gets a little bit off the topic. But Taleb is one of these guys that doesn't practice what he preach, demonstrates a fundamental flaw of cowardice, and is a like Rod Dreher, conspicuous consumer. Okay, he's an oyster slurper. Sorry.
Oysters are also just gross. I distrust people that like them.
Well, I like them.
I know it's a flaw. It's like you said. Not all the things are slam dunks.
Yeah,
you know.
No.
But also, like, just seafood in general, other than fish.
Really?
Like, shrimp is just it's a cockroach in the water.
Yeah.
Why are you eating the bugs?
Yeah.
Fish is okay. But like shellfish is gross.
It's okay.
Guys.
They're water
Stop
bugs.
It.
They're not land bugs. It's different.
Stop it. Yes. Stop it with the water bug eating.
All right, we're almost through our list, but there are a couple more. So you need to look at their professional affiliations, and this more applies to like online political or quasi-political people. So are they? Somebody can have a lot of great ideas. Like Jack Posobiec has some good takes on stuff from time to time, despite the fact that he's shilling pillows and like emergency food all the time. But his affiliation with Turning Point USA, the outfit that Charlie Kirk is involved with, and numerous people on TPUSA are out homosexuals, and they're still saying they're right-wing conservative people. These right-wing think tanks are like a lot of the personalities involved with them are basically just designed to give you a message that will appeal to you, get you sucked into the orbit of their personalities, and so you can be directed away from things that will change that will better your life, that will disconnect you from, that will make you less needy of the power of Washington, D.C. and more independent. Like their job is to keep you in the system, to keep you playing the politics games, to make sure you go out and vote every year. And I'm not even saying like voting's necessarily bad, but the idea is it's like you're looking there. These people have the solutions. People in Washington, members of think tanks, people in media personalities, like they're gonna save the day for us. We just got to get the right people in power. They keep you married to this idea. That's their job, and they do that by recruiting and cultivating these public personalities that have a sort of charisma and are able to speak the language that the people actually running the show have no capability of doing, because they're so disgusting and compromised from a life of living in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's not if you're right or left. If you believe in the system at all,
yeah,
you're still
right. Yeah. All this stuff applies on the left.
It's just going to play you.
All this stuff applies on the left too. Like the left has its own think tanks and its own phony baloney personalities. I don't think our audience is mainly there. I'm not there, so I'm not. I'm speaking from a right perspective because that's what I know. That's what I understand. It's who I am. So also, do they speak at CPAC every year? I mean, these are establishment DC swamp power structures. Okay, not to get all Trumpy about it, but he has a point there that none of these people are real or honest. Like all of this political stuff is they're just trying to get you to part with your money, and they're trying to get you to spend your energy on them rather on your own life and the people around you, and doing things that could actually make a small difference. They want you to make you what they're doing is they're giving you the promise of making a huge difference that will never happen to distract you from what you can actually do, which is a small difference. And the small differences matter. We can make a lot of small differences, and you can build a civilization from those things, right? Like you can build a house out of bricks, a small object, and you stack them up in the right order, you build a house. Like those small differences are what we're gonna live or die upon. But you can't make them if you've invested your agency in this big Washington think tank thing, okay? Or this big power structure far away of all these personalities and these politicians. If you're invested in that, you're not gonna do the things that are really gonna make a difference.
Because it just politics itself is the waste of time.
Yeah,
like it doesn't. One of the things I have a friend who's like 40 and he's never voted, and that means he's enlightened.
Yeah,
that means he's the true enlightened being. Everyone else is stupid, because he was like, "What is the difference?" And he's right. What difference would it make? I
actually think there's a way to think about voting and to vote that is useful, and it's the government of my enemies, the people that are trying to ruin everything I love about life, are giving me some fractional say, so I'm going to use it against them. So the reason I voted for Trump the first time he was up is because I wanted to do something to sort of ruin anything I could in Washington, D.C. And I thought Trump would do that. He would make them all mad. They would be distracted. They can't keep up with him, like rhetorically. He's always ahead of them. He drove them crazier for a few years. Did he accomplish any spectacular reforms of America and like lead us on a new path? No, we stayed exactly on the same path that we were going. Nothing fundamentally changed, but there was chaos up there, or at least there appeared to be. And I didn't have anybody from Washington, D.C. telling me I had to wear a mask or take a vaccine during the Trump administration. I didn't have any of this problem. They left me. They did. The DC left people alone for 4 years for the most part. Now
that's true,
compare that
you
to
can
how
always just ignore them.
Well, true. That's important.
Okay.
Because they're always talking, right?
They're always talking.
But you do have to ignore them. But the level of interference in the individual life under Trump and under Biden are two completely different things. I mean, there's been the paradigm shift that has happened in daily life has been tremendous for people, and there are actual real effects in real life. So not trying to get political or whatever, but the point was, it's like there's a way to vote where you say, okay, can I create chaos in the camp of my enemy? Can I apply leverage here? And it's a little more effective with local elections. And so it's like you don't vote for like the slickest guy with the coolest plan. You vote for the most insane person you can find. I mean, especially at the local level. Like if there's some embarrassing woman who's like, we have to disband the Department of Education, and she's running for school board, and she wants to like flip the table over and scatter the meal, like I'm voting for her, right? So like that's a vote that could actually mean something. But that's kind of the way you got to think about your relationship to government power now, because they don't care about you. They're in it for themselves, all of them. But anyway, so the last point, and this applies a lot on the right, unfortunately, is do they have past affiliations with the pornography industry or shady characters adjacent to pornography? So Jack Murphy.
Right. Jack Murphy.
Turns out that he was all into doing gay porn. Also, there's a talent agency called Explore Talent, and I'll link an article about this in the show notes. That run by this Israeli dude who is also a porn producer, and it's some sort of a weird talent agency. And let's go. There are a couple of big names that have profiles. Candace Owens is one of them.
Yeah,
she has
of course
a profile
she's in
on there.
Israeli porn somewhere. Of course, duh.
I don't know if she
Why
actually
wouldn't
did.
She be?
I don't know if she actually did porn. I mean, hasn't come out anywhere, or I haven't seen anything like
probably,
that.
But it's
Just the affiliation with this guy whose name is Amir Shafir. Just the fact that she had a profile on his talent agency's
if the name
website.
rhymes, don't trust him. Amir Shafir.
Also,
Jack Black.
Lauren Boebert is on this guy's website in her underwear, right? Like trying to look all sexy and pose on this Explore Talent website. And you can people have documented this, and you can go look it up. It's like, why do these people who are supposed to be like, and Lauren Boebert's in Congress, so why are these people that are supposed to have some sort of a moral leadership affiliated with an Israeli pornographer? Okay. But if you don't look for these associations, you won't find them, and therefore you will get fooled. And so take all these rules, dear listener, and start applying them to people whom you are considering listening to, and make some judgments, because you are capable of making judgments. You really can't.
Right.
You can. You have your aesthetic sense or your ethical sense maybe mangled, but it's not lost. You still have it. You can make some judgment calls here, and we can all be smarter about the people that we choose to follow. And then none of you, if you do so, none of you will be taken in by a Jack Murphy type like gay dude. You know what I'm saying?
At least you'll get taken in less often.
Less often, at least. We got to stop the vicious cycle, people.
Well, that was good, but now I want to undo it by denying the reality of anything.
Oh no.
I want to undo it by denying the reality of everything.
Oh no. Okay.
Because yeah, all those were good points. But I still feel like even if you think there's a solution, you're still a part of the problem. Right? I think that is I'm giving okay. So as I said at the beginning of the show, I think that the Matrix is basically the you know how I say they always have to tell you?
Yeah.
It's the most tell you of all the have to tell yous. It's like the most in your face obvious about what is happening.
Okay.
And I don't believe that we live inside a computer.
Good.
Let me just throw that out there.
That would be dumb.
Right. But I do believe we live in a false reality, crafted it through various ways, and that you can wake up from that, and that if you do, you can have telekinesis.
Oh, okay.
So there we go.
Yeah.
So just like Neo says, right? Or in fact, like Jesus said.
Right.
Because Jesus was a proponent of telekinesis.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're referring to.
Right? He said you can throw mountains into the sea if you had even a mustard seed of faith.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no, but no, he didn't seem to be being metaphorical there. Right? Because he was just using that in reference to the fact that he just killed a tree by talking to it.
Right.
And the people were amazed by that.
Yeah.
And he said, what? This? Well, you could throw that mountain in the ocean if you wanted. Right? So, I think that the tendency to just pass that away as a metaphor or something,
Mm-hmm.
as Bishop Barron does, who, again, does he pass your tests?
I don't know who Bishop Barron is.
See, he's a famous YouTube Catholic person who
Okay.
talks about it, and he's always, whenever he comes on, you're about to hear how Genesis is not literally true, but metaphorically true.
Okay, one of those
Whenever
guys,
he comes on, he's one of those guys. He can't help it. It's his generation. They had no ability to do. He's a fan of Bob Dylan. he can't help it,
Okay.
right? I'm not blaming him, but
Sure.
he just is not. He doesn't believe in telekinesis, so it's an issue. For me. So okay. The quick recap of the first three movies. A guy who finds out he's literally in a computer and they're in pods. The machines are keeping them in pods, harnessing their energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's trying to free their minds and wake people up out of the pods and destroy the Matrix, right? Yes. Okay. Does he succeed? This is what a lot of people didn't understand the ending of the third movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, there's the girl there with the oracle, and they like look up, and there's like a sunrise over the Matrix now. Because it wasn't this like green sepia tone,
Yeah.
if you recall. So the first movies had two methods of showing you. The method of showing you, are we currently watching the Matrix, like in the Matrix, or are we watching in the quote unquote real world? And when you were in the Matrix, quote unquote, it had like a slightly green filter.
Okay.
A slightly green hue to it. Just slightly. And then when you were in the real world, you were more in regular color, although everything was drab and brown. Because they lived in drab brown Zion and ate slop. Right? The new movie, but at the end of the movie, right, that Matrix is destroyed by Neo. And then a new Matrix comes up with the sunshine. The fourth version, or the seventh version. I forget. I think it's actually the seventh. If you
In the lore.
there have been six.
Okay.
What now?
It's the seventh according to the lore of the universe.
According to the lore, it's the seventh Matrix. They have been 6 versions beforehand, right? Including the one Neo destroys.
Okay.
And what happens is that they keep these people in a false reality, but because it's false, the falsehoods and the lies build up over time until the point where it collapses. And then you have to make a new one. You have to have a great reset, as it were. Right? And there's a person who there's a strand of anomalous code that the people, the architect that makes the Matrix cannot. It's like the remainder when you divide. There's always a little bit of a remainder, and he can't get rid of that bit. So he has to include it in the thing, and that eventually leads to the breakdown of the Matrix every time.
Okay.
And he knows that's going to happen, and he's planned for it. And so at the end of the third movie, Neo, who carries this anonymous code, the remainder, finds the architect, and the architect gives him a choice between 2 doors. And one door, he says, if you go through that door, Zion will be saved. You'll go back, the people will live, and you will repopulate, and we'll start this whole thing all over again like we always did. It's the only choice you have, because if you don't, the machines will come through and they'll kill everyone in Zion, and this is the end of your species.
Okay.
Right? Or you can go through the other door and try to save Trinity, and also that will destroy the Matrix, and then we'll have to go, and it'll be this whole thing, right? And he says, I know what you're going to choose, because all of your predecessors have chosen the same thing, which is to go through the door to save Zion. Right? But Neo genuinely surprises the architect, because he goes through the opposite door to save Trinity, and through near certain death of both himself, Trinity, and the entire human race.
Okay.
Right? He chooses that.
Is this the new movie or is this the third one?
This is the third.
Okay.
One. This is the third one that was years ago. Okay. And that is basically, and then because that happens, he goes into the Matrix one more time. He fights Agent Smith, who has become a viral infection in the Matrix and has taken over every avatar. Is now Agent Smith except him and Neo.
Okay.
So his viral code has spread to where now he is every person in the Matrix is now Agent Smith. So the Matrix is collapsing, obviously. And then he and Neo have this battle to try and see if he can purge Agent Smith from the thing or whatever. And he does at the cost of his own life, and he dies. Okay. And then at the end, the Oracle watches the new. And so the new Matrix comes up, and it is this world. This is an important bit. So the first three movies were shot in a nondescript city. They never mentioned the name of the place. It was just they were in some city somewhere.
Right.
Could be anywhere. Right. In fact, it was shot in Australia, if I remember correctly, so that real people wouldn't know where it was because Australians aren't real. Right. So it was shot in some backwoods Australian place, so that no one would recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
So it had, but this one, the new one is like they're like in Hong Kong or in Tokyo or in San Francisco, like they're in real world places, and they specifically mention them, and it's like they're right there. Because and the sepia tone is gone. It is shot in like 4K. It's shot in it looks just like any other film because the implication is where you are now. This is actually the Matrix here now. Like
okay.
The movie, it is extremely meta, but in a way that is very profound. I was worried the meta would be corny, but it isn't. So the idea they even in the movie, right? So in the movie, the fourth one. All three Matrixes are there. They exist as a video game that looks just like the movie.
Whoa. Okay.
Right. So here's the basic premise. So Neo was dead at the end of the last one, but one of the computers picked up his body and said, "We can still use the anomalous code, and if I have it, I will become the master computer." And they basically used the technology to piece him back together and put him back in the pod, him and Trinity.
Okay.
And they're back in the pods, and so they're in the fourth Matrix. Their bodies have basically been regenerated through this super machine technology. And they have vague memories of the past, but the Matrix disguises it as itself a fiction within the new Matrix.
Gotcha.
So, in Matrix 4, Neo is cast as Thomas Anderson again, but Thomas Anderson is the world's most famous video game designer, and he designed the most popular piece of media in the past 1,000 years called The Matrix, a trilogy of video games, which are exactly the movies. It's not clear how you play this game, because every time they show footage of it, it's just footage of the first three movies.
Okay.
They're like, look at this part in the game. And it's just a replay of the movie. The first three movies are on the television screens in the fourth movie.
Funny. Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, and Agent Smith is also, he has to be in there because he's actually the CEO of the video game company, and he doesn't know he's an agent.
Oh.
He doesn't know what he is either.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the first big thing, is that the movie is telling you you're in the real world. The world that you believe is real now is the fourth Matrix,
mm-hmm.
and the previous Matrixes we have woven in as though that is a fiction.
Right.
Right, and that's what that's what the movie is trying to. Now you might say this is just clever being meta or whatever. However, as I said, there's the amount of Illuminati symbolism is crazy over this movie. There's one eye symbolism all the time. There's pyramid structures. Like one time when they go through and they're looking at the movie of his game, like his game movies, and they walk through, the actual screen it's projected on is in the shape of a pyramid. right?
Okay.
I mean, there's like it's weird stuff weird decisions. And also the 9/11 symbolism is just all over. Like the final battle takes place, although on San Francisco, it's the one building in San Francisco that the exterior from the top looks exactly like the 9/11 Twin Towers.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, it's like, and it's even shot in one way as though it looks like the one building is two for a second.
Uh-huh.
Right? They pick an angle where it looks like you're looking at two buildings when you're really just looking at one. And so for a minute, it looks like they're standing on like Twin Towers.
Oh,
just like a
man.
half second.
Okay.
Right? Now, this combined with the fact that the premise of the movie all over the time appears to be centered around jumping. You have to jump off something.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first Matrixes, you had to unplug, you had to jack out by answering the telephone. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay, you don't have to do that anymore in the new Matrix. There's a new setup. There's new code. And it looks like, it's not quite clear to me how it's supposed to work, but it appears that like once you're out, you can just unplug at any time. Sort of,
okay.
Maybe. Or it's not very, but also there's some constraints on it, but it's not clear what they are. But it seems to be that when you're the first time you're unplugged, like when you're being pulled out of the pod, you have to commit to desiring to do it by jumping off of a ledge.
Ooh.
Right? You had to answer the phone. So you take the red pill and then you have to jump off a ledge. And you have to, this is, and what to escape the Matrix, to escape the real world in which the fake world is presented as a fiction, but it really isn't, you have to take a leap of faith.
Okay.
Right? And so Neo is given the red pill, and then to escape, they jump off a building. Again, the 9/11.
Yeah.
And like I said, everyone jumps off buildings in this movie. It's jumping off buildings all the time to their deaths, over and over again. It's crazy how often this happens. And they do it. They splat on the ground, like and they are going head. The one is head first with his knees bent exactly in the pose of the jumper.
Oh, the guy that jumped from the Twin Towers?
Yes, exactly in that pose. Like the 9/11 symbolism is all, and like I said, Neo's license in the first movies expired on September 11th, 2001, even though the movie was released in 1999.
Yeah, that's messed up.
It is messed up, but that's because this is it's a truth that they're telling. So I want to talk about the Merovingian.
Okay.
The Merovingian is the French guy from the first movies. Do you remember him at all?
No, not really. You're going to have to refresh me.
Okay, I'm going to refresh you. I'm taking a little bit of this from Matt of Quantum of Conscience because he did a dive into the Merovingian also in the new movie.
Okay.
The Merovingian seems to be, in the first three movies, he was like a holdover of all. So the idea presented is that all the Matrixes that have existed in the past, because the new one is built on the foundation of the old one always, there's some remnant that remains. Mm-hmm. And so the new Matrix has to justify that anomaly to the people there in some fashion. So, for example, the first Matrix was like a Garden of Eden. And so now that memory remains in the Matrix, but it's now a religious story. It's like, oh, that's just a myth.
Oh,
just a myth.
Okay.
It's not real, right? Vampires and werewolves are still there. That's from the second version where it was the night they tried to extract more energy out of the people, more psychic energy through terror.
Mm-hmm. And
so some of those creatures are still there, but that's folklore.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
So the existence of these things is presented every time. The existence of the fake reality, which was the existence of the truth in the new reality, which you think is real but is also fake, is presented as a previous fiction.
Got it.
Just like this movie is presenting our world that we live in as containing within it the truth presented as a fiction.
Right.
You see?
Yes.
Okay. So the Merovingian appears to be some sort of vampiric sort of character, maybe. Like maybe he's a vampire.
Okay.
Or something from this old thing. But anyway, he has werewolves in his retinue. He has these weird people that are holdovers from previous matrices that have tremendous power. And he's a Frenchman. He's highly refined. He has a lot of political power with the machines. He enjoys the finer foods of life. He has statues, art all over the place. trophy wife, mistresses, just what every Frenchman dreams that they could be. Right? Is the Merovingian. Now, in this movie, he comes in for like 30 seconds. He was a big character in the first three, and he comes in apropos of nothing. Okay, so Neo and Smith have their first fight, their big fight in this movie, and then out of nowhere, and he doesn't appear in the movie again, and he didn't appear beforehand, the Merovingian, who was previously this very sophisticated, wore a $10,000 suit. He even specifies it cost $10,000. His hair was perfect. He burst in from the balcony, disheveled, homeless, ragged, missing teeth, right? While they're fighting, and he goes, and he looks down and he says, I think I have the script right here. This is what it's saying. This is the words that he says while Neo and Agent Smith are fighting. He says, "You, it is you. All these years, I can't believe it. You stole my life." Then he speaks some French for a minute. Kill him. Kill him. And then they're fighting. And then he says what I think is the key to maybe the whole movie and maybe the whole franchise. And forgive the language here, I'm just quoting from him. He says, quote, "You ruined every suck my silly ass thing. We had grace. We had style. We had conversation. Not this beep, 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 beep." And when he says that, he's actually mimicking texting with his thumbs.
Okay.
We had not this beep, 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 beep. Art was better. Films were better. Books were better. Originality mattered. You gave us face Zucker suck and cock me climatey wiki piss and shit. Isn't that amazing?
And he's accusing Neo of this?
He's accusing Neo of having done it. Interesting.
Okay, so why is it Neo's fault?
That's the question. That's the great question, because here's what Matt from Quantum of Conscience came up with, and I think that he's right. Is that the Merovingian is the personification of art and culture itself.
Okay.
And because remember, Neo is the one that killed the Matrix. He's the anomalous code, and his license to exist, his license expired on September 11th, 2001.
Okay.
The old world expired then. Mm-hmm. You see? Yeah. And they knew it would expire in 1999.
Yeah.
When they released the movie. And so the Merovingian, who was culture itself, he's saying, before you, books were better. Film was better. Conversation was better. Not this beep, 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 beep.
Yeah.
We had style. We had grace. Originality mattered. And you gave us face Zucker suck and cock me climatey wiki piss and shit.
And everybody like our age or older will tell you and we did a whole show about the 90s. I mean, yeah. It was better
retrofuturism
in every way. It was way better.
It was better, and it was better. And it's not just it's the whole world that came before 9/11.
Yeah.
Was a different version of, it was a different false reality. And in that, but see, here's the thing. What it's saying here is, because he was, in the first three movies, he had all the art, he had all this beautiful statues, he had paintings, he had Rembrandts, he had all of it, and now he's homeless and toothless and has nothing.
Yeah. And
he's saying we had style. Art itself is not possible in the new version.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? In the fake reality that we have created now, art itself, culture itself, and the movie is saying this, and the movie knows it. Right? That's the crazy bit. Because he's speaking like, and people I think miss this, what is the Merovingian screaming about? He's like, but we had conversation, not this beep, 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 beep. Face Zucker suck and cock me climatey wiki piss and shit. So you got climatey there, yeah. Right? Climate change, obviously. Wikipedia, WikiLeaks, all this. Face Zucker suck. Mm-hmm. Right? And so he's saying you replaced actual culture and actual art with this. And now that is portrayed as a homeless beggar. But here's the question. How is it Neo's fault? Because he's saying you did it. You ruined every suck my silly ass thing. Why in the new Matrix, and this is the philosophical question here, why in the new Matrix is it impossible for culture to exist and has to be it has to be squashed if it ever tries to arise.
Yeah. Well, I
Right?
think that connects to the first hour, in that people that if a person can understand and appreciate beauty, like objective beauty, aesthetic value, then they can also perceive by association what is good and what is true. And you can't enslave minds that have that ability very well.
Right. You correct. But I think, but see, here's the thing. In the first 3 movies, when I said he went through the other door,
Mm-hmm.
this is why I've said before, like, I think that the Wachowskis are trans as a performance piece.
Okay.
Or something, because this movie is a very right-wing, almost Christian message.
Interesting.
But also it can be flipped on the, it's crazy, because, so he's offered the chance to save humanity, right, and go back to, and take the first door, and that, he'll go back, they'll repopulate Zion. I believe he even says, there'll be like 7 women for every man or whatever, and then the whole thing will start over again.
Right.
Or he can choose. So that's a general love for like humanity in the abstract.
Okay.
Or he can choose the specific love for one person who's also happens to be named Trinity. So like your choice is between humanity or God.
Oh, okay.
Walk through the door, you pick. You can have all the things of the flesh, and it will be what's going to happen. Or you can choose certain death and the Trinity. And he chooses that. And he dies. And now in this movie, he's resurrected, right? It's a very Christian motif here. But how does choosing, and I'm not sure the answer for this, how is choosing specific love, like how did that kill the ability to have culture and art now? And I think maybe the answer is, because another thing that's new in this new movie is that some of the machines are on the human side. That somehow Neo, by doing this choice, introduced love into the machines.
Interesting.
Like he was able to give, because love is the anomalous code.
Okay.
Basically.
All right.
Because I think he gives love to them. He teaches them love in some way. And so some of the machines are on the human side now. And like they have names and they interact with the people, and it's a bit weird. But so what if the movie is saying that this false reality that you've introduced love into, right, will fall apart if people love each other? Because he's not the architect, he's the analyst this time. He's Doogie Howser, Neil Patrick Harris.
Okay.
Who was chosen specifically because of his bright blue eyes. Because he has blue eyes and he has blue sunglasses because he's the blue pill.
Okay.
Right? Who's also a psychiatrist, which is very trad.
Yeah.
Psychiatrists are evil.
Yep.
And he says at some point that they have to keep, that the Matrix produces the most output if he keeps Trinity and Neo close but never coming into contact. So if there's this frustrated love that can never be actualized.
Okay.
But if he did, in all the simulations we ran, if they ever got together, the Matrix blew up, like it was over. And so the idea presented is that the fake reality will fall down in the presence of too much true love. And anything that expresses that, culture or art, has to be squashed. Right? And instead you give us face Zucker suck, cock me climate wiki piss and shit. I think that's what the movie is trying to say. Like, you do exist in a false reality.
Uh-huh.
Like, face Zucker suck is a false reality. Cock me climate, like, they know climate change isn't real.
Yeah.
Cock me climate wiki piss and shit. It's all, it doesn't, he says it doesn't matter. It's not original. Originality is like, it's not even a new lie.
Right.
But that has to be, because if people did have actual human connections, like, you have to be alienated. You can't go see each other.
Yeah.
You have to talk over the computer. It has to be Zoom. It has to be because the false reality depends on human beings not having actual connection.
Yeah. Who was
Right?
it that said alienation is the underlying theme of all modern literature? I can't remember, but it's a profound point. It's
and I
absolutely
think
true.
that's especially true since 2001, a 7/11 Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's even, I think there's even, when they're at the top, even in the bottom of the thing, like in the corner of the shot, there's like a 7-Eleven. They are like, while they're showing this tower, it looks like, so you can't have, and people have to be replaced. And like the other thing is so many of these, and the whole movie is like all these ways that real love is frustrated and made impossible by the fake reality. So a lot of the people in the film, including Trinity's husband, because she's in this new Matrix, has a husband and kids, are bots. They are NPCs. They're people placed in the Matrix, but they're not actually people in a pod. They're just
computer
like
simulations of people.
Right.
Okay.
And that's true. It seems like that is true for almost everybody. Like, people don't have real relations. Like, a real person seldom, if ever, gets paired up with another real person. The Matrix forces them into a relationship with a bot. And you see this very, very profoundly, like when at the final scenes when Neo and Trinity are trying to escape on a motorcycle. What they call, Neil Patrick Harris calls swarm mode is activated.
Okay.
Because it's like a zombie apocalypse, just like we saw in the riots last year.
Yeah.
Where people just can flip a switch and they go crazy. He turns them on, and then everyone that's a bot, their eyes have a sudden shift, and they just swarm and attack Neo and Trinity. And so they're driving down the streets between these two buildings, and one of the people is in bed cuddling his wife. His eyes open. He gets up suddenly. The lady says, "Baby, what are you doing?" And he sprints and dives out of the window. And she's like, "Ah!"
Rad.
And he dives out of the window, strikes the falling man pose head first, and tries to land on them at the bottom. Basically, he's becoming a human bomb or an NPC bomb.
Yeah.
And so everyone on the street then in this alley is jumping out of the windows, trying to land on and kill Trinity and Neo. Right? So there's like a whole scene in the movie where everyone is just jumping to their deaths.
Wow.
Over and over again.
Man.
And it's very intense because, and I think, and so the whole thing of the movie is that Neo and Trinity are a pair, like, because Neil Patrick Harris says, I kept trying to get you to work, the anomaly to work, until I realized it wasn't just you, it was you and her.
Oh,
right.
okay.
And it was, so the message was that the fake reality can exist if it uses and manipulates true love, but never lets it, the desire for it, but never lets it actualize.
Yeah.
And if it's actualized, then the false reality will fall down. In fact, at the end, when Trinity and Neo have gotten together and they have their powers back, they go and confront the analyst, who's the new architect, sort of. And she's like, they're basically all powerful at this point, and they can do whatever, and they're just beating him up. And she like kicks him into a wall, and then she says that one was for using kids, right? Because they know the false reality is propped up by manipulation of children and like people's empathy towards children.
Yeah.
Because like she was given fake children to tie her to the Matrix. And these other, and that's a comment, like the children dying in Aleppo, which were largely made up.
Yeah, yeah.
And the children, that are dying of COVID, again, largely made up. Like, they understand, like, the movie is telling you they understand what they're doing. And I don't think the Wachowskis understand what they're doing. I think that maybe on some level, but see, this is the thing. In the movie itself, the agents of the Matrix no longer know they're agents. Right? Because Agent Smith, until Neo wakes up, he doesn't wake up. He's tied to Neo, and so when he wakes up, he remembers who he is and why he exists. And Morpheus is an agent in this one.
Oh.
Right? Morpheus but he is a good agent. He wakes up from his own programming.
Okay.
And he realizes his purpose in life, but he's lived his whole life not knowing he was a digital sentience, like he was an agent of the system. And so the people that parrot the false reality on the news, the politicians, many of them don't even know that they're servants of the not nilk, the whatever this is.
Mm-hmm.
They're just running their program. Right? And so I think a lot of the agents of the system don't even know why they're doing it, right? But the system does know. It does know they're using kids, right? Because she doesn't say my kids. She says that's for using kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then Neil Patrick Harris, the analyst, goes even further to proving my point that this is really a right-wing movie of some kind. Because he sits back down in the chair after he's been beaten up for a bit, and then Trinity is actually so powerful now in the Matrix, she can snap her fingers and undo all the physical damage she just did to him. So she cuts his head off and then snaps his finger, and then he comes back and he's like, that was uncalled for. And he sits down and he's like, here's the thing. You think you won, and you did. Congratulations. But now what? This is always a problem for you humans. Now what? After the victory, what do you do now? You think you come here and we debate, make a deal? We have a dialogue. He says, you think you can set the minds of these people free? And then he uses the word sheeple, and he says, the sheeple love my imprisonment. They love the certainty it gives them. Even though it is a torture, it is a certain torture. And that they prefer over uncertain freedom. And that was like, wow. Yes.
That's pretty right wing.
He says they do not want to be freed by you. And that's how the movie sort of ends. It's like, well, now we've got this, that statement is made several times in the movie. Like when Neo is first free, he's talking to the new people. They don't live in Zion anymore. They live in a place called Io, which is both a moon of Jupiter and computer slang for input output. I don't know what that means exactly.
Okay.
But they live in a place called Io. And, Neo's talking to one of the guys, and he says, yeah, it's different now. Freeing people is harder. It's like, I forget the exact quote he says. It's like people don't want to be free anymore, like the Matrix 1.
Yeah.
Like they're comfortable with their enslavement.
Yeah.
And that theme comes up several times, like that, that the people don't even want to be free. And then there's another scene where when Neo and Trinity first get together, sort of, and they've sort of, Neo's at least woken up, but Trinity hasn't. Neil Patrick Harris comes in and he stops it. He has bullet time power and all this stuff or whatever. But and he slows down the whole thing so that only Neo can hear him. And he's like, Neo's moving in slow speed and he's not. And he's explaining like why he had to use the both of them. And he goes, my predecessor, the architect, was all facts and figures. He was all logic. But he didn't understand you people like I do. He didn't understand that you people, quote, don't give a shit about facts.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about what you feel, and your feelings justify it. It's just what you believe up here, and he points to his head. And then he points to Neo's head and says, I think he actually points in the shot. It looks like he's pointing to Neo's head, but he's actually pointing like through the screen at the people.
Okay.
It says, and you people believe the craziest shit. And your feelings justify it. And so it's a lot easier to manipulate feelings than it is to manipulate facts. And but the result is the same, is what he says. Yeah. So it's this message over and over again of like, it's created a false reality, preying on your feelings and your desire for true love, but then always frustrating it because if it happens, it breaks down the false reality, right? Is sort of intense, but I think that's actually true. I think that's basically how the world is. Because so much of this, as we've documented on the show, so much is fake and gay. It's not like so much is to a level that makes people uncomfortable. How much is fake?
Yeah.
And that's why we have trouble in this show, because I'm like, guys, listen, listen, at least the moon landing was just a made up thing. And people are like, "Meh." And then you go on and you're like, but maybe a lot more was too. Like, I don't know how far you want to go with it, but we can question a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff doesn't hold up if you start pushing on it.
That made me think of something I saw this week. I don't know if you remember, like, winter of 2019 or maybe early in 2020, you were getting all those really scary videos coming out of China of people convulsing and all this. Dead bodies.
It's never happened here.
Wrapped up in garbage bags. And somebody like zoomed in and pointed out that in one of those videos of the truck full of bodies wrapped in garbage bags or wrapped in plastic and taped up, one of the bodies is like smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, the whole thing.
And nobody ever noticed because we were so gripped by the horror of it all. But
the feeling,
it wasn't even a good fake. And it's like, if you were to examine it critically, it was right there. The guy was smoking a cigarette. The guy was
all not
and
true.
all the seizures, all these people having seizures that never happened over here in the way that it was presented to us on the videos. I mean, I'm sure somebody somewhere had a seizure. That's not really the point. But like these, hospitals and rooms full of people like shaking on the ground, it never happened. Like that was totally fake.
Yeah. And like, guys, the president's head sometimes now disappears through a green screen.
Yeah.
And pictures of apes, not even pictures of apes, URL pointers to pictures of apes sell for as much as a Lamborghini.
That's so crazy.
The world isn't real.
Yeah.
You understand? Like, this isn't a real thing that's happening. It's a false reality that you're living into. But the analyst defends himself as Satan does, and he says, this is what they want. You see?
Yeah.
And this is how Satan justifies. He said, I'm giving them exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And Neo even at some point says, I couldn't wake up. Like, Trinity asked him what took him so long, and he says, I didn't want to do it. I think maybe I didn't want to wake up for fear of losing you again. Right? So the fear of the true love not working out, not taking the leap of faith because it may not work.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting movie. The whole all four of them. And then the Merovingian finishes his line. I forgot the last line. So the fight ends and the Merovingian is still standing on his platform ranting like a homeless person. And then he finishes and he spits at him. He says, "This is not over yet. Our sequel franchise spinoff." And then he walks off. Right? And so it's something with 9/11 is like this like reset. Like that was a reset too. And if you think about it, if you live through it, it was a reset. Like the world before and after were different. And people's perceptions of the world were different. And people's assumptions about what mattered were different. And right now we're living through another reset, perhaps a bigger one, a harder reset. And you're watching in real time as the fake reality shifts underneath you and people they receive the download of the new reality and they just believe it and they just walk in and they're like, yeah, it's always this way. We've always been at war with East Asia. And it's frightening because the movie is posing the question of you want to wake these people up, but you can't because this is where they want to be.
Yeah.
Right? This is what they want. But also, here's the thing. If you didn't believe the fake reality, how powerful would you be if you really got out of it? Can you actually throw mountains with a word like Jesus said? Or walk on water? He never said he was the only one that could walk on water. In fact, he said, those that follow me will do greater things than I. Right? And then no one takes that seriously. But also, people don't take it seriously enough to have faith. Because, like, think about what faith is. Faith is not like just, oh yeah, I believe in the Nicene Creed.
Right.
Like, you can't have people like, I have faith in God, and then they have like a smoke alarm. And I know that seems like a silly comparison, but think about it for a second. Like, I have faith, but I lock my doors at night. I have the savings account. I have the insurance. I have the this. I have the that. And you think it's all prudent and stuff, but what is that saying, really? Like, what is that? Are you doing the thing where you have no thought for tomorrow if you have all those things? I mean, it's hard to say that you are. And so if you're not willing to go that far, if you're not willing to trust that tomorrow or today is going to be okay because you believe in God and God is there, what measure of faith do you actually have? Is it all just, or is that itself a frustrated thing with a fake reality? Like, you have it and it gives you a simulacrum of it. Because even the cafe where they meet all the time in the movie is called Simulate. The Simulate, it's like everything they do is a simulation of what is real because they're too afraid to take the leap of faith that you need to get out of the Matrix. And so the Matrix pacifies them by giving them a simulated, watered-down version of what they actually desire.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about how many people love COVID.
Love COVID.
They love it.
They people. I mean, I had a great time at the movie theater because no one was there because of COVID.
Yeah.
I was literally the only person in the theater.
Wow.
And that, again, now I don't live in the most populous city, but enough to where there should be somebody else there.
Yeah.
And that, to me, while I was watching it, felt even more like this was fake because I'm sitting there like, how is this movie theater open? How are they still in business?
Yeah.
If I'm the only one here watching arguably the biggest blockbuster of the year, maybe, and I'm in this theater all by myself being talked to by Neil Patrick Harris. Like, how is this even working if this is real?
Yeah.
Like, if this ran by economic principles, how is this possible?
Mm-hmm.
And I have that feeling a lot. Like, businesses are fake. I don't know to what degree, but they don't need your money. People are always like, well, they don't need your money. They just the government just hands them new money.
Well, yeah, at a certain scale, you had a good take on Twitter recently, and you were saying, yeah, we get confused because the free market is operative at the small local level and the small businesses and everything. But then we assume that it's also operative in the realm of giant multinational corporations, but it probably isn't.
Yeah, no, I don't know to what degree it's fake, but it's super like, why did no big businesses ever go out of business?
Yeah.
You ever think about that?
Well, sometimes they get bought up because I guess they have assets and they just sell, and that's the globalism equivalent. But even with the COVID stuff, I mean, the small businesses were forced to be closed,
right,
and went out of business. But Walmart kept functioning.
Yeah.
Certain businesses the rules didn't apply to them, just like the rules of free market capitalism don't apply to them. The rules of COVID mitigation didn't apply to them either.
Yeah. Space suckers suck. I love that he said that in the movie, and caught me climatey. Like, they know, like, they're saying, like, we know this is, but people aren't going to catch that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I think, are upset about the way the Merovingian was treated because he was this beloved character, like this beloved bad guy. He was an interesting bad guy. And now he's like this homeless guy that just screams for like 3 minutes. And then, like, that's the entirety of his...
Yeah.
That's the entirety of his contribution to the movie. But I think that was actually the most important lines that were said throughout the whole thing. So,
going back to people loving the simulation and loving COVID. People also love 9/11.
Yeah, and there weren't any planes, guys. I'm just going to throw that out there. I've said that before. There weren't any planes. Go watch the footage again. There were no planes hitting those buildings. I know that sounds like I'm being like over the top, this reality is fake, but that's the level that it is actually fake at. Is they just CGI'd some planes at the footage of a building that exploded and fell down in a normal demolition style.
I mean, we could do a whole nother show about 9/11. I saw recently, I just watched some of that old stuff again. And the video of I think she was on BBC presenter, was talking about how Building 7 had collapsed when it hadn't collapsed yet. It was standing.
Yeah,
it was
I know.
Standing behind
they talked about it before it happened. Just like Neo, the license plate, license expired on the day. It was a planned event.
Yep.
And then you say, by whom? by the architect, by the analyst, which is another way of saying Satan. And Satan is allowed to do that because that's what people want. See, he's allowed to run free on the earth because that humans have chosen him, right? And God respects your choice, but you don't have to. You can wake up from it at any moment you want. And the way you do it is how Neo was presented to doing it, is you choose true love and you choose the door that leads to the Trinity, to God, over the one that leads to the pleasures of the earth and the flesh. Like, it's the same thing. It's an extremely Christian movie series.
That's wild.
Even though you could easily read it in other ways if you wanted to stay in the not know reality. You can read it in a different way. And so it's that's why I think that this is why this movie wasn't destroyed. Like, because as the Merovingian mentions, they have to destroy all art now. You have to make a remake and it has to be terrible.
Yeah.
It has to destroy what came before it.
Yep.
The Star Wars movies have to make a mockery of Star Wars. You always have to, it has to just destroy. But then, this one, they have to play straight because this is the truth drop movie. This is they have to tell you. Because Satan, your choice has to be your own choice. Like Neo, on some sense, knew he was in the Matrix in this one, even while he was in denial of it.
So that's why he was seeing a psychotherapist, because he knew something was wrong.
That's why he was seeing a psychotherapist. And also, the way he gets out is because he's a video game programmer, right? In the thing, is he programs basically Morpheus into his video game, and Morpheus achieves sentience. So Morpheus is a simulation within the simulation who achieves sentience, and then he subconsciously leaves a path out of his video game to him, who comes out and then rescues him from the Matrix. Right?
That's wild.
It's a wild movie. And the whole time this is happening, they're talking in the movie about how they're going to make Matrix 4 the video game. And they're like, you know what people want? And this is brilliant. Because they're arguing in the boardroom with like Neo there, and he's like having trouble because he thinks this is somewhat real.
Yeah.
You know, and he's doubting his sanity. And there's these like fat programmers and nerds sitting around, and there's like a woman with blue hair and whatever, and they're talking about like what to do with Matrix 4, the video game. And they're like, yeah, I think the first three were too cerebral. I think this day's audience, they just want a bunch of boom, 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 and bullet time and kick ass. Right? And he's insulting the audience to your face while you're watching it. But then the cerebral message is still there.
You're a sucker for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a pretty brilliant movie on several levels. And I think that it tells you it was something that was so meta and so commentary on the way reality works that it could only have come from the harpsichord of the devil. Right? And I think that's because it's just like there's no way these people like that Merovingian thing was just too perfect. Like art and culture itself have to die because if they're expressed, if true love is given an outlet, this false reality will fall down. Is an amazing admission of like what's going on. So and you're maybe on some level they're rooting for that to happen. You know?
Yeah, like people that want to fail, secretly want to fail. Yeah.
Well, I think on some level, I think maybe on some level, and I don't mean that they're good, but on some level, Satan and the Satanists are sort of rooting for you to wake up. Like people think this is the thing. People think like that they're out to the Satanists just want you to die, and they do, but they really, if you're not one of the sheeple, they sort of root for you. Like, they get pleasure on... Like, there's one scene where Agent Smith is standing, he repeats the same line he did from the first one, and he quotes it as though he's quoting the video game, and he says, that was a great line. I love that you wrote that line. And he's looking out the window, and he goes, billions of people living around their lives, completely oblivious. And then he turns and says, it's too perfect. It's so perfect. Oh, this is also to make fun of Elon Musk, because he says, it's so perfect, it has to be fake. Remember when Elon Musk basically said that? He says, it looks so real. It looks so fake. That's how you know it's real.
Right.
He turns around and he says, it's so perfect. It has to be fake.
Yeah.
And then they're sort of rooting for you to wake up in a way. Like they believe in applying pressure and that the cream rises to the top in a demonic sense. And so if you cave to the pressure, then they believe that you've consented to die and deserve it. But if you don't, then they sort of have a begrudging respect. That really does seem to be how it sort of works.
It seems like a kind of a, I don't know, screw tape letters sort of idea.
It is a screw tape letters idea. Yeah, it's exactly that's exactly how their mind works. Like, well, like they're offering you these things and like, well, if you take it, that proves that you don't deserve anything better. Right? And so those who don't take it do deserve better. And that's their mindset. And so they're offering you the fake reality and you say, "Oh yeah, sure." And it's like, "Well, that's just you're just one of those people. That's what you deserve." And so, what if you actually got out of the, like, could you actually walk on water, perhaps? Maybe. I mean, Jesus did, and at least one of his followers for a second.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that is, because the Matrix, the false reality wants you to feel, it enables you to feel small. It gives you a world small enough that you can pretend you're your own God.
Yeah.
And in that, you have to be small enough and diminutive enough. It's paradoxical. But you have to be small and diminutive enough to where your concerns feel like all there is. But what if you broke out of that and you were in the actual, you were like united to God himself.
Yeah.
And then what would you be like then? I don't know. But you probably wouldn't include face Zuckersuck. That's a great line. I love that he's just in the middle of there, just through Zuckerberg is like, this Zuckerberg is like the epitome of anti-culture.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like,
there's nothing beautiful is ever put forth on Facebook. I mean, it's just, It's nothing but vomit.
Art was better. Films were better. Books were all better. Originality mattered. And you gave us face Zuckersuck and cock me climity wiki piss and shit.
So was okay, here's a question. Was 9/11 the inauguration of the Matrix program in real life? Is that one thing?
It was the inauguration of the new one. So like the old Matrix died. And this is a thing I've been trying to figure out what the movie is implying here, because the movie is implying that the one or people or humanity in some way chose a specific love, or they went after, the old one had to die for that reason.
Yeah. Someone chose, I don't know who. And then the new one was resurrected. And then this new one's specific love must be frustrated at all times, because this one is predicated on that not being allowed. Yeah. And I don't know what event they're talking about, but the old one expired just like his license on September 11th, 2001, and the new one was resurrected. That's when face Zuckersuck started to happen. Cock me climity began. Wiki piss and shit began. All of the stuff the beep beep beep, conversations, not this beep beep beep, that all started after the reset of 2001. I think you could make a good case that the collapse of the Soviet Union and the and Nixon opening up to China and all that stuff that was going on in the 80s and 90s may have been the collapse of a matrix. Yeah, and then it culminated in 2000. Could be. Then they had to start it up. They needed new conflict for everybody's minds to lock in on. So 9/11 was done. Yeah, very possible. Very possible. And so that's why the devil is like, people are like, why did God allow this stuff to happen? And it's in the words of the analyst himself. Like, this is what if they didn't have it, he says, if you tried to release them, they would die because that's not what they want. Also, Kennedy trying to normalize relations with Cuba, yeah, Glasnost, all that stuff. It had to be stopped. The world was getting too peaceful and human beings were getting along. You can't have that. Mm-hmm. It's good. Yeah. Good show. I think maybe the people couldn't have it. Like they didn't want that. They wanted to be back. Yeah. Yeah. We could. Face Zuckersuck, man. I don't know. It was a great movie though. All right. So even though it was made by the devil, maybe still see it. Yeah. Well, it's like one of those things, like, out of the mouths of
devils. How's the saying go?
I don't think that's a thing.
Whatever. It's a good movie. It's sort of evil,
Yeah.
but you know, what are you gonna do?
Targets up here, we just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast and went right over the top of us.